guessing as to where I stood in the popularity stakes, I played with Payne on Sunday and Freddie on Saturday, and I said in the press conference, if I hear, "You're the man, Freddie," one more time, I was going to be sick. And not that I don't like Freddie. Freddie's a lovely guy, and I was great mates with Payne, so they're really good blokes. But
Wayne Grady, name 6. Golfers he absolutely hates. That explosive Facebook post in 2022 shocked the golf world, but it was only the eruption of a volcano that had been building for decades. Wayne Grady is remembered as a major champion who once carried the pride of Australian golf. But the list of golfers he claims to never respect exposes a side of him fans rarely see. This is the story of a man who spent his entire career haunted by one traumatic loss, insecure about his one major victory, and convinced the modern game betrayed everything he believed in. Why did he explode at Greg Norman after 50 years of friendship? What drives a man to hold grudges for 30 years over a single golf shot? And how did his bitterness turn him into the self-appointed judge of golf's loyalty and history? In May 2022, Wayne Grady seized the global narrative of golf with a fiery Facebook rant. He was 68 years old and his target was Greg Norman, the CEO of Live Golf and his former friend and teammate. Grady branded Norman an absolute disgrace and told him to hang your head in shame, Shark. But the real venom came at the end when he signed off with 3 letters. GFY Shark. Go expletive yourself, Shark. This was not a sudden outburst. It was the culmination of a grievance Grady claimed had simmered for 3 decades. He accused Norman of trying to take down the PGA Tour for 30 years. This was personal, public, and permanent. The admiration I had for him is gone, Grady wrote. He had just severed a 50-year relationship in the most brutal way possible. But here is what makes this moment so revealing. Grady wrote that post right after attending the memorial service for Jack Newton, another Australian golfer. He contrasted the funeral, where he was surrounded by true professional golfers who believe in loyalty and history, with Norman's disruptive Saudi-backed venture. This tells you everything about Wayne Grady's psychology. He sees himself as the defender of a sacred history. He is the gamekeeper, the enforcer of unwritten codes. And anyone who violates those codes, even a former friend, must be publicly excommunicated. That Facebook rant was not just about LF Golf. It was Wayne Grady trying to define the true history of Australian golf by casting Norman out of it. But to understand why he became so bitter, you have to go back to where it all started. The 1989 Open Championship at Royal Troon. This is ground zero for Wayne Grady's professional resentment. He entered the final round as the 54-hole leader. He held that lead for much of the day. But then came a painful bogey on the 17th hole, and suddenly he was tied. He fell into a playoff. Not just any playoff, but the first 3-way playoff in the history of the Open. And the other 2 participants were Mark Calcavecchia, who would win, and Greg Norman, who would lose alongside him. This single event linked these 2 men in Grady's mind forever. One as the victor who stole his championship, and the other as the fellow Australian who failed with him. The loss haunts him. 20 years later, in a 2009 interview, Grady admitted he still felt like punching Mark Calcavecchia. He told a story from 2003 when he saw Calcavecchia practicing flop shots on the range. Grady walked up to him and said, "You bastard, you should have done that on 12 in 1989. He was referencing a moment in the final round when Calcavecchia holed a pitch of 60 feet on the 12th hole. To Grady, that shot was pure luck, a theft. And in that same interview, Grady revealed why the loss was so traumatic. "Of course, I would have loved to have won 2 majors," he said, "because one is almost considered a fluke." This is the key to understanding Wayne Grady. His hate for Calcavecchia is not a simple competitive grudge. It is a deep, abiding resentment toward the man who hit one lucky shot and denied him permanent legitimacy. In his own eyes, he was branded a potential fluke. Just 13 months later, Wayne Grady won the 1990 PGA Championship at Shoal Creek. This should have cured his fluke anxiety. Instead, the narrative surrounding his victory only reinforced it. Grady's win is defined not by his own dominance, but by the spectacular collapse of Fred Couples. The defining highlight of the tournament is titled "Wayne Grady Wins, Fred Couples Falters." Couples led by a stroke after a birdie at the 12th hole, but then had 4 consecutive bogeys while Grady shot par for the rest of the round. Grady won by shooting a steady final round 71 while Couples carded a 72, and his final pairing partner, Payne Stewart, imploded with a 79. He was the last man standing, a victory by default. Even worse, even in his moment of ultimate triumph, he could not escape Greg Norman's shadow. The Sports Illustrated cover story on his victory ran with the headline Grade A. Wayne Grady stepped out of the long shadow of fellow Aussie Greg Norman to win a tranquil PGA championship. Think about what that means. His career-defining loss in 1989 was a story of his bogeys and his opponent's miracle shot. His career-defining win in 1990 was a story of his opponent's collapse and his own symbolic struggle to escape Norman's shadow. He lacked a signature dominant moment. This psychological critical cocktail, the anxiety of being a fluke, and the resentment of being a shadow provided the perfect toxic fuel for a career transition into public criticism. Unable to secure the legitimacy he craved on the course, Wayne Grady transitioned into a role that offered a different kind of power, the power to judge. As a poacher turned gamekeeper, he weaponized his anxieties from the BBC commentary booth, transforming his personal grievances into a professional creed. Grady himself defined his critical philosophy in that 2009 interview. When asked if he ever takes heat from the players, his answer was immediate, all the time. He justified this conflict as a matter of integrity. "I've never intentionally criticized a player," he claimed. "It's my job to report on what I've seen and try to give some insight. Neither do I smooth everything over. If I see something that I think isn't right, I'll say so." This is the negative angle defined in his own words. He framed his criticism not as bitterness, but as a moral imperative to speak truth. He was no longer just a player. He was a self-appointed arbiter of what isn't right. A perfect example of his critical persona is his long-running feud with Phil Mickelson. "Phil Mickelson was upset with me many years ago," Grady explained in 2009. The incident stemmed from what Grady dismissed as a throwaway comment. During a broadcast, Grady observed that Mickelson's caddy, Jim Bones McKay, was not reading putts with him. Grady told the audience, "Phil and Bones can't come to terms with reading the greens this week, so Phil is doing it on his own." The fallout was immediate. "I didn't think there was anything to it," Grady said, but the media got him straight after and said, "I hear there is trouble between you and Bones. All of a sudden, Mickelson wouldn't talk to me for years." This anecdote is profoundly revealing. Grady seems genuinely perplexed that his public reporting could sever a relationship for years. He fails to see the difference between a private observation and a public broadcast that insinuates conflict. He views his criticisms as simple truths, while the targets experience them as deep personal attacks. This years-long feud with Mickelson was a precursor to the 2022 LIV explosion. When Mickelson joined forces with Greg Norman, the man who cast the shadow over his entire career, it was a perfect storm. It confirmed his worldview. These were not true golfers defined by loyalty, and he had the receipts from years of feuding to prove it. Around the 300-word mark of our journey through Grady's grudges, take a moment to comment below. Which of these feuds surprises you most? The decades-long resentment over one golf shot? The years Mickelson wouldn't speak to him over a broadcast comment? Or the explosive destruction of a 50-year friendship? And if you're finding this deep dive into golf's most bitter grudge holder fascinating, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting to the heart of why Wayne Grady became the gamekeeper who believes everyone else broke the rules. Wayne Grady's negative worldview expands beyond personal grudges into broader ideological hates. As the self-appointed gamekeeper, he has taken a zero-tolerance stance on professional misconduct. In his 2009 interview, Grady revealed a black-and-white worldview. He noted he was reading Game of Shadows, the book on the Balco sports doping scandal, and offered an unsparing opinion. "I'm absolutely opposed to drug cheats," he said. "They should be in jail for fraud. It's just wrong." This rigid fraud mindset provides context for analyzing his hate of professional misconduct, specifically as applied to Colin Montgomery. During the 2005 Indonesian Open, Montgomery was found to have incorrectly replaced his ball on the green after a rain delay. The incident led to a rebuke unheard of for a generation, with the European Tour's tournament committee formally expressing dissatisfaction with his actions. Montgomery apologized and donated his prize money to charity, but the affair festered. Fellow pros like Sandy Lyle later publicly accused Montgomery of cheating. For a man with Wayne Grady's moral absolutism, there is no gray area. A player who believes drug cheats are frauds would almost certainly view a player who misplaces his ball as a perpetrator of the same category of professional misconduct. This hate is ideological. Montgomery represents a fundamental breach of the game's core integrity, an act that is just wrong. As a high-profile BBC commentator during the height of Tiger Mania, Tiger Woods was a frequent subject of Grady's analysis. His relationship with Woods is a complex negative angle built on three distinct layers of criticism. First was the old guard commentary. Even in 2009, before Woods' public scandals, Grady was known for his willingness to be critical. An interviewer noted a comment Grady made that a lion beats a tiger was a sacrilegious statement when one is within a 10-mile radius of a certain Mr. Woods. This confirmed Grady's reputation for puncturing the Woods mystique. Second was the tactical criticism. When Woods was set to be a playing captain for the 2019 President's Cup in Melbourne, Grady offered his advice. "I'd rather him not," Grady stated. "I'd rather him just play. He can do just about anything, but personally, I'd rather see him just concentrate on playing and give it to someone else." This was sober and analytical, the poacher turned gamekeeper in his purest form. The third and most potent layer stems from his time as chairman of the PGA Tour of Australasia. Grady's job was to bolster a struggling tour. He was seeking more quality players and publicly called on the US PGA Tour to throw Australia a bone. He argued that we've given so much to world golf and deserve the support of the game's biggest stars. In this light, Woods' failure to play more in Australia was not just a scheduling choice, it was a personal and financial slight. Woods represented a new generation of superstar who would not give back to the world golf that Grady's generation had built. This professional and financial financial resentment undoubtedly fueled his on-air critiques. All of these hates, rivalries, and grudges converge with violent force on Greg Norman. Norman is the ultimate traitor in Wayne Grady's eyes. A line-by-line look at that Facebook rant reveals everything from someone who has known Greg for 50 years. This opening establishes standing. Grady is positioning himself as a witness, invoking their shared history as friends and teammates. This frames the conflict as a betrayal, not a business disagreement. Greg is only about Greg. This is the core. Psychological indictment. It reframes Norman's entire great white shark persona as nothing more than pure narcissism. He has been trying to take down the tour for 30 years. This is the historical linchpin. This accusation, referencing Norman's failed 1994 World Golf Tour concept, reframes the entire relationship. It implies that for the 30 years since their 1989 and 1990 heyday, Grady has been waiting for this betrayal. It suggests that Grady, the one stuck in Norman's shadow, always suspected Norman's loyalty was conditional. The LIV Tour wasn't a shock. It was a confirmation. For him to try and trivialize what the greats before him did is an absolute disgrace. This is the historical indictment. Grady the Gamekeeper speaks for the dead. He is positioning himself as the defender of a sacred history that Norman is trivializing. I went to the memorial service of Jack Newton, surrounded by true professional golfers who believe in loyalty and history. This is the moral contrast. He creates a powerful dichotomy. On one side are the true Australian professionals who value loyalty and history. On the other side is Norman, the disgrace. Grady is attempting a palace coup, seizing the narrative of Australian golf by excommunicating its most famous player. The feud was critically inflamed by Norman's own disastrous public relations. Just before Grady's rant, Norman had fielded questions about LIV's Saudi backing and the 2018 murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, with the clumsily worded response, "We've all made mistakes." This comment drew widespread condemnation. Norman's comment provided the moral ammunition Grady needed. It allowed him to frame his negative angle not as petty jealousy or a 30-year-old grudge, but as a righteous stand against a man who had betrayed golf's history and trivialized murder. Wayne Grady's negative angle is not a collection of random grievances. It is the remarkably consistent worldview of a true believer in a version of golf he correctly identifies as being extinct. Each of his hates is a thread in a single tapestry of resentment, and all of them lead back to the fluke anxiety that has defined his life. His hate for Mark Calcavecchia is the most pure. It is a 30-year grudge against the man who, with one bastard shot, denied him legitimacy and branded him a fluke. His rivalry with Fred Couples is the confirmation of that anxiety. A major championship won not by dominance, but by faltering, cementing his status as a champion by default. His hate for Phil Mickelson is the hubris of the gamekeeper, a genuine bewilderment that a man would not talk to him for years merely for having his professional integrity publicly questioned. His hate for Colin Montgomery is ideological. It is the zero tolerance of a moral absolutist for a man who breached the game's sacred rules and was rebuked for it. His hate for Tiger Woods is generational and administrative. It is the resentment of the old guard administrator toward a new king who refused to pay tribute to the world golf kingdoms that Grady oversaw. All of these hates converge on Greg Norman. Norman is the ultimate traitor. He is the man who was there for the 1989 trauma. He is the shadow that loomed over the 1990 triumph. He is a fellow friend and teammate who, in one final act of being only about Greg, took a disgraceful payout from a regime. In doing so, Norman did not just break a rule or ignore a tour. He trivialized the very loyalty and history that Wayne Grady had spent his entire post playing life trying to protect. But here's the thing about Wayne Grady. Despite all the bitterness, despite all the grudges, he was a skilled golfer who contributed to the game. He was a major champion. He gave insightful commentary. He worked to build Australian golf as an administrator. The tragedy is not that he criticized others. The tragedy is that he allowed his insecurity over one loss to define everything that came after. He could never escape the feeling that he was a fluke, so he became the enforcer, the gamekeeper, the man who judged everyone else's loyalty while his own was rooted in fear. Golf moved on. The game evolved. New stars emerged. But Wayne Grady stayed frozen in 1989, forever haunted by that 60-foot pitch on the 12th hole. So, which feud shocked you most? Was it the explosive destruction of a 50-year friendship? The decades of resentment over a single playoff? Or the realization that one man's entire worldview was shaped by the fear of being called a fluke? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more untold stories from the world of golf.